Going back to Croke Park, though, we know that the All-Ireland final is very much Kerry against Galway. James O'Donoghue, Paddy Andrews watched an extraordinary second half, and it really was extraordinary. James, for people who didn't see Sean O'Shea's point, and I'm sure everybody will see it in due course, it really was a magnificent strike into the wind. He must have started that ball 10 metres right of the post and curled it in.
He did. We've seen some unbelievable long kicking, especially off the ground in this championship. We saw Rian O'Neill to take the Galway quarter-final to extra time. But Shawnee, he put in such an effort through that 17 minutes. He was running his legs into the ground. He didn't get much joy from playing the second half. He got a couple of frees. But Kerry got a foul probably 5 or 6 metres outside or 5 or 6 yards outside the 45, and they were going to take it short, and they decided, no, we'll put it down for Shawnee, and up he stepped, and he absolutely rifled it over the bar with such conviction and confidence. And as soon as it went over, the Kerry crowd went absolutely berserk, and everyone was coming in, jumping on Shawnee. They knew he was after winning it for them, even though the kick out hadn't been taken. And soon enough the whistle was blown. But what a deserved way to win the game, an absolutely incredible strike.
I was reading a piece about him in the Sunday Times this morning. Mick Foley had written it, and the extent to which O'Shea, and you probably have some insight to this maybe, James, is obsessive and has been for a very long time about his kicking, can't be underestimated. This is a guy who practices hour after hour after hour, and Mick Foley in his piece spoke to people who've known him since he was a very young player. There's probably not a more dedicated GAA amateur in the game, really. Absolutely,
he does everything right. He puts time into every part of his game. But I know when he was younger, I believe he took a year out between school and college, and between that time he put on serious muscle mass and he nailed down his free taking. They were the two things he seemed to do. I think he might have done a bit of work or something like that. He wasn't in college anyway, and he really dedicated himself to his football. And the muscle mass he put on, and along with his free taking, his kicking went through the roof. And since then, he has never had a bad run with free taking. He has been consistently brilliant for Kerry from place balls since he went into that position. So no better man to step up in the last minute against Dublin for the first championship win in a long time.
Paddy, we talked well, at half time you were chatting to Mort Trassa, and it felt like this game was really just teetering on the brink of being out of Dublin's reach. And then you would say even on 40 minutes Fenton scored, and at that stage Dublin hadn't scored in 25 minutes, and Fenton arrested that slide with a point. But it just looked like it wasn't going to happen for Dublin. Costello's goal was really one of the extraordinary goals that you'll see. Like, it wasn't really on, but he just knew he had to spark something, and it really was exceptional.
It was an incredible goal, and look, Cormac probably, he was quiet. It was his only score of the day. Dublin needed something. Like I say, they've been in this situation before. We were looking down, Dublin started to get a bit of momentum. They were leaving David Clifford one-on-one with Mick Fitzsimons inside pretty much the entire half, and we're looking down, what other team will do that? Dublin knew they had to attack, they had to try and get this game back. We asked for massive performances. Kieran Kilkenny scores 3 points from play in the second half. James McCarthy, me and James O'Donoghue, we were in awe of looking at his performance. He's been on the road so long. He kicks a point from underneath the Hogan stand that it's a 1 in 10 shot, and he rifles it over. And the crowd, the atmosphere here, Joe, was absolutely insane. A massive change for Paddy Small came on at 40 minutes for Dublin.
Yeah.
The Dublin full forward line, there was, look, you can't beat around the bush. They were getting no joy in there whatsoever, and Paddy Small came in and he was the spark that lit the flame in that second half. He was showing for every single ball. 74 minutes on the clock, he comes out and collects a 50-yard kick pass off Brian Fenton for a mark. It was the only really time Dublin were kicking the ball inside to the full forward line. That's what Paddy Small brought. Dean Rock actually ends up kicking it over. There's a bit of back chat, so it turns into a free, and at that stage you're thinking extra time here, possibly penalties. People were whispering it up in the press box, and you think Dublin have miraculously, they've got it back. And then it comes down to Sean O'Shea's kick. He's taken his place alongside Maurice Fitz and Turles in 2001.
Yeah.
That is one of the most iconic scores. Like, I can't underestimate the breeze that's there. You've seen in the first half how it affected Dublin shooting. He's over 50 metres out from goal into a really stiff breeze. As James has said, it's 76 minutes on the clock by the time he hits it. And the two scores, he had a really quiet second half, Joe. He gets Kerry's 2 scores in injuries time. He wins a free off Lee Gannon and clips it over. And then that is going to be one of the most iconic scores, not just in Kerry's, in Gaelic football history. It's broken the duck after 13 years. It's heartbreaking. I'm heartbroken. I can only imagine what the Dublin lads are like. We knew this would be a monumental game, and Jesus, it was.
And did I see, was Shane Ryan out of the goal looking to maybe think about taking it?
We thought it was going to be Shane Ryan. He sprinted up the pitch, and to be fair to Sean O'Shea, he turned around and he fancied it and he sent him back. I was happy enough he was taking it on, Joe. I have to say, I was thinking, there's no way he's kicking that into that breeze. And the minute he hit it, I knew we were in trouble. It was such a sweet strike, and it hits the back net. It has another 10 or 15 yards. It was an incredible kick, and
quite a languid style. I mean, it was Brian Sheehan-esque.
That's the thing. You're in danger of forcing it because it's right on your range, and anyone who plays golf, if you start trying to force the shots, you can get a bad connection. But like I say, that could have went another 10 or 15 yards. It was an incredible strike in the context of the game. How it had panned out. Kerry looked on the ropes. They looked on the ropes, and that the mental aspect we spoke about, that none of these guys had beaten Dublin. You seen the reaction. It means everything for them. They're going to be favourites going into the All-Ireland final against Galway. Dublin will be thinking, if only somehow Con O'Callaghan by hook or by crook was on that pitch, it could have been so different. But I think overall, look, over the course of the 76 minutes, Kerry probably do deserve it. Yeah,
there was a nagging sense, I suspect you had it, Paddy, that Kerry were still going to win this game one way or another. They just seemed to be the better team throughout. So Costello's goal is on 46 minutes. That gets it back to a 2-point game. Then straight away, I think Clifford has a wide, and then Kilkenny has that fisted point where there was almost a goal on. Then it's 12-13, and then Kilkenny again pops up with the equaliser, like a lot of the big boys. Penny, for your thoughts at that stage, James, did you think Kerry had lost their way a touch, or did you still feel there were calm heads out there?
No, I was worried at that stage because Dublin had got that momentum that you dread. You just don't want them to sniff that victory from underneath you, and they did. They knew they had the momentum with them. Kilkenny was coming into the game. Fenton was starting to kick the ball. As Paddy said, Paddy Small came into the game and just changed the way Dublin were playing. So at that stage, I was going, oh no, we just have to keep playing, because what Kerry had done, they dropped everyone back. The whole game was being played kind of between Kerry's 45 and midfield. There was a lot of ball around there, and only Clifford and Fitzsimons were up the other half of the field. And you're thinking, lads, will you get a bit of shape so we can keep playing our football? If you just invite Dublin on, they will score and they will kind of pin you in. And I don't think Kerry's bench had as much of a positive impact as they're probably hoping, and Dublin's impact had probably a greater impact than they were probably expecting. So that was one kind of thing that definitely swung it a bit in Dublin's favour. But in fairness, Kerry stuck it out. They showed good mental strength. They didn't do anything stupid. They didn't kick any silly ball away or do any crazy turnovers in the last minute. And sure enough, if you just do the simple things right, a chance will somehow find its way to you. And Shawnee buried it.
Well, there was even quality in the free before O'Shea hit that extraordinary free. You probably saw it better than I did. So it was Clifford who was fouled, but like the little pop pass, one bounce into chest pass, was a really brave pass. I'm not sure who hit Paul Murphy.
Yeah,
like that's something that will be lost into the ether of the magnitude of the game. But a pass like that at that moment of the game, that kind of quality, it was tight and real quality there.
Absolutely. But that was the kind of story of the game. Kerry seemed to be able to get those little pop balls into their full forward line, but on the other side, Kerry's full back line seemed to eat up Dublin's full forward line, except for Paddy Small, to be fair, who had a great game when he came on. They couldn't seem to get that run and couldn't get separation to allow the Fentons and the Kilkennys to give that pop pass. Usually that's Dublin's trademark. They kind of hand pass the ball around maybe 50 yards out, and then suddenly they inject pace with a kick pass in. So it showed incredible bravery by Paul Murphy to risk losing the ball at that time, but he nailed the pass. Clifford has great hands, he won it, and he was fouled, and the rest is history.
Yeah, Paddy, the overriding image you have of Dublin in this game, aside from the kind of last 15 minutes where they really had momentum and were looking good, is, as James described, a lot of possession between the 45 and the 65, but Kerry, you would have to say, very, very comfortable in the main, and it was extremely rare that Dublin either had the space or the inclination to kick it inside. There was once, I think, in the entire first half where it went into Rock and he lost it, he was crowded out. Beyond that, they didn't really do it. Things opened up a touch more in the second half for various reasons, but if there's a kind of, like I said, defining image, it's of Dublin in possession and struggling to break Kerry down.
it's the nail on the head, Joe. At this stage of the championship, you have to take risks. You cannot be conservative and win the All-Ireland. I wholeheartedly believe that. I don't think it's possible to try and kind of like nearly ponderous play and hand passing and lateral play. You have to take risks. You have to try and force the issue. And Dublin with Conor O'Callaghan, that's what he brings. More so than the obvious stuff is, we know he's so clinical, he's ruthless, he's going for goal, but he gives the option. Like, I know Brian Fenton, I played with him for 10 years. He wants to kick the ball. He is looking inside you so many times, and he just didn't have the option. The Kerry full back line was on top. Rock and Costello were losing their battles. They just weren't quick enough to get out in front of their men, so Dublin had to play a more passive style of play. Paddy Small changes that. We see it, like the mark he gets, that's Dublin's best play.
Yeah.
That's what they're looking to do, and Fenton is looking up, and the second he sees it, if you make the run, he's going to kick it to you. And that just shows it's not him thinking, I don't want to take risks. He wants to do that. And you're right in saying Paul Murphy's thing, we're 5 minutes into injury time, the game is level. It's easy to turn around and hand pass the ball back. The best players, the experienced players and the winners, they'll go for it, and Paul Murphy goes for it. And that 15-yard kick pass, it was a risk, because Fitzsimons can get a hand in and it's a turnover, but Kerry got the rewards from it. You're not going to win the All-Ireland being passive. I'm sorry, it just won't happen. And look, that was Conor O'Callaghan's greatest loss for Dublin today, that they couldn't play that style of play where they're so efficient and their speed and their attack. They just didn't have that today, and they still nearly got away with it.
In hindsight, Paddy Small should have started. Pre-game, was that your thought as well, Paddy?
I thought he would, but then, Joe, on the other side, you're saying you need an impact off the bench. You know, that was a criticism of Dublin last year. We've seen, like, they held Niall Scully and Paddy Small in reserve. Lorcan O'Dell started, didn't really impact the game. He's a young guy. He'll be much better for that experience, but do Dublin go and put their absolute best players on the pitch and try and keep it going for 75-80 minutes? That's probably not realistic either. You have to have some sort of impact off the bench. So, and that's the challenge with depth, Joe.
Yeah.
We're looking at the bench and going, who is going to be the spark? Who's going to change this? Like, Niall Scully was actually pretty quiet when he came on, but really him, Paddy Small, Davy Byrne, to be fair, when he came on in the defence, but that's only 3. You know, it used to be a case of you'd have 6 guys coming off and they're all kind of match winners in their own right. That was the challenge, and it's just come up short for Dublin. It's a heartbreaking defeat for them. James,
you're probably better placed to answer than those of us watching on TV. So Paddy there described that sense of frustration with Dublin having to just recycle possession and that kick pass not being available into the full forward line for large swathes of this game. It did seem then, and again especially in the first half, but throughout the game, invariably when Kerry got possession, they were able to hit Dublin pretty quickly and pretty directly.
Yes, that was also the way Dublin set up, because in the second half, I think they went down a goofy points down at half time and they said, look lads, we're going to come out here and we're going to go for it. And we were sitting down in the Hogan and we could see it was wide open scoring into the hill for Kerry in the second half. There was literally 3 defenders and 3 forwards, no protection. It was chalk and cheese to yesterday, where there was 15 behind the ball on both sides. Dublin left it open and they said, look, we're going to take the risk here. So that did allow Kerry to play through the lines a bit faster. But that said, Kerry didn't make hay in the second half. So they didn't tip on as many points as we said. When we were talking earlier, we said that Kerry needed to stay clinical. That Hill goal seemed to have a blustery wind, and you need to be clinical inside in that goal. Kerry missed 4 or 5 very handy points when they're playing lovely football, but they missed the chance, and that gave Dublin the kind of just a chance to get back in. Yeah,
I mean, we're talking of wides, I would say as well, Paddy. I mean, yes, Kerry had their wides, but Dublin kicked a lot of bad wides first half and second. And actually, if you're going to have that less explosive full forward line, we talked pre-game, you know, with Con out, it might be up to those players who tend to kick from distance to really nail everything. Like, Dublin had a few too many wides where you would think, if you've missed that one, it's not going to be your day.
Yeah, and look, that's the margin for error at this stage of the championship is so small.
Yeah.
Like, Costello has 2 wides, Fenton has 2 wides, Howard has a bad one in the first half. It was Kieran Kilkenny. Like, I was playing into the hill, Joe. It is, people might find it strange for a Dublin player to say this, but it's a very difficult goal to shoot into, because there's always a breeze there. That's what makes Sean O'Shea score all the more remarkable. But you felt what we said it beforehand, for Dublin to win this game, they needed performance for the ages from Kilkenny and from Fenton. And to be fair, in the second half we got that. It was amazing leadership, but just those couple of scores that they left behind, this was always going to go down to the wire, no matter, even with Conor or without him. And ultimately those couple, their regrets Dublin will have, but look, what's made them so successful previously in the past is that efficiency in front of goal, the 85-90% scoring rate. They were a little bit off that today, and you just, like I say, you can't afford it at this stage of the championship.
No, it doesn't take much. The other thing to mention, again, people maybe who haven't seen the game or will be reflecting on it or leaving Croke Park and sticking in the headphones. Like, in fairness, James, I'm talking to two forwards here, but some of the defending was extraordinary. Like the amount of turnovers against top quality forwards.
Yeah, I think there was, in fairness, in defence there was some savage displays. I think Tom Sullivan had an absolutely great game. He had to come in and he had to mark Paddy Small, because Paddy Small had such an impact in the first kind of 15 minutes when he was on the field. Jason Foley ate up Dean Rock. I mean, in fairness, Dean Rock is an unbelievable forward. Jason Foley didn't seem to have a problem with him. Tyke Morley had a great tussle with Kilkenny for a lot of the game, but those that was kind of being changed outside. You'd have to say Fitzsimons did a decent job on Clifford, even though Clifford comes out with 4 from play, a free and a mark. But like, are you going to get any more out of Fitzsimons in that situation? They did bring on Davy Byrne, who settled it a small bit back there, but as you said, the matchups on both sides seemed to kind of bear fruit, and they were kind of as we expected, with no one doing too much damage on either side.
Will there ever be a day, Paddy, where someone keeps Clifford scoreless from play?
No, honestly, I don't think so. Like some of his scores, it's not just some of them were absolutely unbelievable. It's a highlight reel in itself, just today.
Yeah.
And I said it beforehand, he scores 6 points today, 4 from play and a mark, which he wins himself, obviously. But Mick Fitzsimons, I thought had a good game. And it's incredible to say that. You're thinking if you're on the full back line and your man scores 5 points from play, you've had a howler. But that's, I can't. I mean, we spoke about this at length on the podcast, and I can't really remember any forward. Like Gooch is obviously incredible. We had Bernard Brogan or Connolly at times. I can't remember anyone like Clifford. I mean, Galway, good luck to them. They're going to have to pull something out of the bag to try and deal with him, because he was quiet in the second half. And that's to Dublin's credit, himself and Shawnee Shea. They scored 110 out of Kerry's 114, and we said there was a question mark around Kerry. Until we know the quality of them, but until these guys go and do it on the biggest stage. And to be fair to both of them today, it's incredible leadership for relatively young players. But in terms of his quality, Joe, I mean, I'm a Dublin fan sitting here, but you had to clap some of those scores. Like, we know how difficult it is at that level, but he's just an unbelievable talent.
Yeah, I can't say, James, I've seen anything like him.
Yeah, one thing, we said he was a bit quieter in the second half. Like the first half, he was absolutely unbelievable, unmarkable. But he hasn't had a lot of training, as we said, because he's had those couple of injuries, couple of knocks. They've wrapped him in cotton wool. So I think he might have just fitness-wise found the going a little bit tough in the last 15 minutes there. But even for the last ball,
they lost their shape as well, though.
They did
Dublin,
definitely, yeah.
Dublin literally just threw caution to the wind, and Kerry had no shape in the second half. That's why, more so than, it wasn't like Fitzsimons started getting the better of Clifford or John Small or Davy Byrne was getting the better of Sean O'Shea. The ball just wasn't going up there.
Yes.
Kerry's shape was gone because Dublin basically just said, threw the shackles off and go, if we don't go for this this could get messy.
Yeah.
And the structure of the game and Kerry's attack was completely gone in the second half. It was nearly like, reminds me of when we used to play Mayo in those games, that they just drag you all over the pitch. They were just going for it, and that's what made it incredible.
And Paddy, that's probably to Dublin's credit, because the way it was going in the first half, it was far too organised, and Dublin were being picked off.
Yeah, exactly. Like, games are always going to start like that. It's rare the ball is thrown in and it's helter-skelter from the very first minute. I thought the issues Dublin had, the second quarter, they only scored a point. And Kerry were very comfortable in dealing with the Dublin attack. Dublin obviously go down to 40 men with John Small, but any time Kerry attacked, because they had Geaney inside, it was a quiet game. He wasn't great, he was taken off for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
But they had Shawnee Shea, Clifford was inside the 21, Geaney was inside the 21. They had a structure, and David Moore and Dermot O'Connor and these guys could start kick passing the ball in. That's what Kerry want. And Dublin, just to their credit in the second half, like, we were having conversations at half time with a couple of people in the press box, there was a danger of it getting messy for Dublin. They were hanging on by their fingernails, and they were 5 points down, and they think if Kerry get a quick start here, they could be in real trouble. But that was Dublin's credit, and you know that they're an experienced team. They've got some absolute warriors over the years, and they were never going to let that happen. But yeah, the chaos more so than anything in Kerry's attack, that's where Kerry were really struggling.
Yeah. I guess if O'Shea scores that penalty, it does get messy.
That
By
one
the
puts
way,
them 7 up, yeah.
Yeah. By the way, he's totally entitled. I mean, look, he probably knew that Comfort was going to get a belt as well. I presume he's totally entitled if the ball breaks to have a crack at it.
100%. He has to go for it.
Back to Charlie Redmond days.
Yeah, and like, to be fair, there was no complaints around Sean O'Shea. I think there was a bit of a melee again, that word, after that. But for Sean O'Shea, it kind of hits off Evan Comerford's knee after the initial save, and your heart is in your mouth going, he's actually going to get the rebound, so he has to go for it. There's no complaints at all about that. He has to go for it.
In the main, like, moments like that included Costello. I kind of had a good whack at someone when they were going for a ball, and he whacked him low, and a few like moments of argy-bargy. But like, I would say that game was played in an amazingly like competitive but like respectful type of spirit. And even at full time, I saw Jack O'Connor and Kilkenny, having a good chat, and you suspected Kilkenny was wishing him luck for the final, and like a few warriors like Fenton and Moran and these guys shaking hands. Like, there was a touch of kind of this big boy stuff, none of the melee nonsense about this game.
But Joe, that's what it is between Dublin and Kerry, and it is an incredible rivalry, and the game itself is bigger than any player, and there's massive respect between the two teams. When you're retired, I love going down to Kerry and spend some time playing a bit of golf with some of the older lads, and Danny's here standing behind us waiting to have a chat. That's just between Dublin and Kerry. All those players understand the tradition and what it means to Gaelic football, and look, you're privileged to be a part of it. Dublin have had an incredible run over the last 13 years, and we spoke about beforehand, you felt like they were trying to really keep this Kerry team at bay. That's an incredible win for them, but I wouldn't expect anything less. There's incredible respect between the supporters, but mainly the players, because, like I say, it's bigger than any player.
So James, now that Kerry have not just beaten Dublin, but they've come through that kind of furnace last 5-10 minutes test and really proved their mettle in the kind of white heat of championship, they go into this final as overwhelming favourites. You can't lose this game. You're going to win by 10 points. How does that sit on them, do you suspect?
Well, today Kerry had to play open, expansive football. They had to leave their backs exposed at times, and they had to look into forwards who were playing 3v3. It is going to be unbelievably different against Galway. Like, there is not going to be an ounce of space up on that forward line. Galway are going to get 15 men behind the ball, and they're going to try and turn you over and break. So Kerry need to seriously tune out of this Dublin thing. They have to park it. They have to say, right, we played our open football, now we have to tactically come to a kind of an idea together so we can work the ball around against Galway and pick off our scores without turning over the ball. Kerry love to play a fast kick passing game. I think that could be fairly restricted against Galway. Once they get to the opposition 45, it's going to be a patience game. A fella like Clifford could be absolutely tortured. He might not have that many possessions, so it might be a case of getting your half back line up the field to try and take shots or break lines. So as much as you say Kerry are favourites, they have to really readjust for that game. So it's definitely not a gimme. I mean, Galway are going to fancy their chances big style.
Do I hear you chuckling, Paddy? Or
it's incredible listening to it. The Kerry thing, it's just automatic. It just kicks into gear.
Is he not right though? Is this like a kind of tricky one after a match like today?
He is, to be fair. And, it reminds me of the 2014 All-Ireland that James obviously was a key part of that season, where they beat Mayo with an absolute epic, and it's one of the great games of football down the Gaelic grounds. And they played Donegal in the final, having beaten Donegal, obviously beating us, and it was a pretty dour game, but that's when they knew what Donegal were going to do, and Kerry they understood that and they adapted to the challenge. Jack O'Connor has been around the block. He's going to know that. They'll expect that. Galway's best chance is exactly how James has described it there. They're not going to throw caution to the wind. If they get into a shootout, you feel nearly any team that gets into a shootout with Kerry, this Kerry team is probably going to lose it. So Galway, the most impressive aspect of them, Joe, this season has been that there's a little bit of steel about them now, and that's Cian O'Neill has come in, and it started that day in Castlebar when they beat Mayo, and it was like, geez, we haven't seen this from Galway before, that they 12 or 13 guys behind the ball. You always associate Galway nearly like Kerry in a way, where it's going to be really flash, and they've got lovely players. Being lovely does not win the All-Ireland. And Galway are going to be set, and they're going to try and frustrate the life out of Kerry. That's their best chance, and try and use Shane Walsh. Like Damien Comer will ask, nearly in a Conor Callahan-esque mould, he's going to ask questions of that full back line. Rob Finnerty as well, he was tied up yesterday, but he'll get a bit more space against Kerry than he did against Derry and Chris McCaig yesterday. It's going to be a brilliant game. It's going to be a brilliant game, but we said it beforehand, whoever came through this game today was going to be red hot favourites. And I'm not going to go with James in this. I think Kerry are going to win that final. And I think that mentally the win, the momentum they get out of beating Dublin today is, you cannot understate that, despite what James says and what he's going to say over the next 2 weeks.
Oh, he's over the next 10 years listening to him as they're going for 6 in a row, saying, look, we take each game as it comes. One very last one, I'm just watching Desi Farrell being interviewed on the television, Paddy. So year one, comes in, wins that COVID All-Ireland, probably doesn't get a huge amount of credit for it, doesn't change a huge amount. It feels like as soft an All-Ireland as there'll ever be, fairly or unfairly. Year two is quite messy, everything from the COVID training furore to Cluxton, and is he here, is he not here, and just this sense of standards slipping. And here we are after year three. So what are we to say where Farrell is?
Yeah, it's been a tough year, but these type of challenges were inevitable. Like in any sport, you can't stand at the top of the mountain for so long. Players move on. That's just sport. So whoever came in after Jim Gavin was going to have an incredibly difficult job. I think Desi's done an excellent job. I've had a lot of time from. It has been challenging this year. There's no doubt. The National League was a bit of a disaster, but you've seen how quickly they turned it around, and that's the Dublin's credit. Like, they get relegated back in at the beginning of March up in Clones, and you're thinking, my God, have the wheels completely fallen off this? And the turnaround they've had, and you can't get away from the fact they've lost by a point to what I feel will be the All-Ireland champions, and they're missing their best player. So it's not all doom and gloom. You look at the likes, Lee Gannon had an outstanding game and an outstanding season, and he is, even just his mentality, he is going to be a leader in this Dublin team going forward. You look at Paddy Small, he now puts his hand up and says, do you know what, the time of Bernard Brogan and all these guys, that is gone.
Yeah.
It's gone. You can't keep looking back. Desi Farrell has started that process, and Dublin will be back again next year. Make no bones about it. He's brought these players through, and that's going to be the challenge. It's never easy trying to recycle teams, but he's the best man for the job. And as disappointing as it is today, I look at the positives from where Dublin were 4 or 5 months ago, where you're thinking, like, they mightn't even win a Leinster championship. They have come within literally a kick of the ball of being back in an All-Ireland final, which I would have had them as red hot favourites for.
Fellas, super stuff today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe.
Cheers. James O'Donoghue there, Paddy Andrews there with us after Dublin 1-13, Kerry 1-14, July 24th, 3:30, Kerry against Galway, All-Ireland final.